The Bahrain Grand Prix was held last weekend, and it ended clearly proving the dominance of Red Bull Racing in this season as well. Aston Martin was the biggest surprise of the weekend, and it appeared as a possible title contender of this season. Mercedes' improvement was not sufficient enough to challenge Red Bull, and we can expect a good fight between Aston Martin, Ferrari, and Mercedes when the season unwraps. In today's video, we are going to discuss the special moments of the last race weekend. But before we proceed, hit the subscribe button and smash the bell icon for more exciting updates. It was a solid practice session for Red Bull, who topped the timesheets. But a little bit of bouncing was experienced by both the Red Bull drivers, as they had a doubtful situation about an unidentified porpoising problem again. Overall, their pace was good, and Red Bull appeared to be introducing their full power with the intention of checking for any errors. But the remaining part of the timesheet was a mixed one, where it was difficult to make exact predictions. Both Ferrari and Mercedes appeared to be hiding their full power. However, Fernando Alonso was able to surprise everyone at the first practice session, and he was second only to Perez. Overall, Aston Martin's performances were good, as Stroll was P6 at the end of the first practice, and he was not fully recovered for racing after surgery. There was hope for an unexpected debut for their reserve driver Felipe Drugovich, but Stroll's determination was high, and he continuously participated in the second practice session as well. It was a very strong practice session for Aston Martin again, and this time, the 41-year-old Spaniard topped the timesheets, and his teammate Stroll was comfortably in P6. Both Verstappen and Perez were in the top 3 again, and the biggest surprise of the session was Nico Hülkenberg, who broke into the top 5 in an unexpected way. There was no satisfactory level of results from the Brackley-based team, as both Hamilton and Russell were among the midfield teams. Toto Wolff promised for a surprise, and Mercedes fans were wanting something that can challenge Red Bull's dominancy over 2 seasons. With the available results, it was difficult to predict the outcome of the race. Then, all the teams headed for the last practice session on the next day. This was the final chance for the teams to make an adjustment before the race. Mercedes fans were not totally happy about the first 2 practice sessions, and finally, Hamilton broke into the top 5, recording the 4th best time in the timesheets. Russell was also P6, and the Mercedes duo sandwiched the Ferrari driver Leclerc. Fernando Alonso easily tops the timesheets again, and his teammate was also P7. No upsets from Red Bull Garage, as they topped the timesheets again, holding P2 and P3 very easily. But the midfield was still not stable, making it difficult to predict the outcome of the race. McLaren or Alpine were not up to the expected level, as both were eyeing at 3rd position in the Constructors' Championship. It was a totally disappointing qualifying session for Pierre Gasly in his debut race with Alpine, as he stayed at the bottom of qualifying. All the rookie drivers, Sargent, Piastri or Nick de Vries, were unable to break into Q2, and Haas driver Kevin Magnussen was unable to make his way out of Q3. But his teammate Nico Hülkenberg was able to push his Haas into the Q1. The Red Bull duo Verstappen and Perez easily topped the timesheets, and Leclerc was able to push his Ferrari into P3. He was followed by his teammate Carlos Sainz, but it was not the results expected by Alonso or Aston Martin during qualifying, as they were very strong during all 3 practice sessions. Alonso and Stroll were P5 and P8 respectively. That means there was no Mercedes within the top 5, and Russell's effort was sufficient enough only for P6. He was followed by Hamilton. Despite the disappointing results from Gasly, Ocon was able to break into the top 10 as P9. Both the McLaren challengers were unable to break into the top 10, opening a big question about the pace of their MCL 60 Challenger. The race started at 18:03 p.m. local time under floodlights. Verstappen had a good start, and he was leading the pack with the advantage that he got during qualifying. Leclerc passed Perez without much challenge, and when coming to turn number 1, Leclerc struck into the slipstream of Verstappen. Leaving from turn 1, Verstappen was in the lead, and he was followed by Leclerc, Perez and Sainz. But there was a very tight battle between Alonso, Hamilton and Stroll for the 5th position. When the pack approached turn 4, there was a heavy fight between Russell and Stroll for the 7th position, and in that defending effort, Stroll ran deep on the brakes into turn 4, making a collision with his teammate. Luckily, both were able to continue the race without much damage. However, the crash cost the track positions of both the Aston Martins to Mercedes. Then, Alonso continued his fight against the Mercedes duo and tried to pass Russell in the 13th lap. After a side-by-side battle through turn 4, Alonso passed the young Mercedes driver. There was a little battle between Verstappen and Leclerc during the tyre pitting, and the two teams went for different strategies in the race. Perez was also at a touchable distance from this duo, and by lap 25, Perez made an attempt to pass Leclerc. At this moment, Perez's battery was totally full, and he made use of it by easily passing Leclerc by making an inside move at turn 1. Then, two Red Bulls started to lead the first race of the season, and they were with a sufficient pace to challenge a threat from behind. Behind Red Bulls and Ferraris, Hamilton's Mercedes was running, and he was followed by Alonso. Mercedes sensed the threat and immediately called Hamilton for a second set of tyres. At the same time, Stroll was called to pit, and Russell's position was at risk with that call. Russell also went for a tyre change in the next lap, but Stroll was with a good pace and heating his tyres to put the Mercedes under pressure. After running side by side, Stroll was clearly in front of Russell when exiting at turn number 4. Then Perez called for his second and final pit stop, and he had maintained enough time gap with Leclerc to secure his second place. It was a long time since former teammates Hamilton and Alonso had a close fight between them, as they were never with cars that performed at a similar level. But this year, Alonso has a good car, and he got the chance to battle with his former teammate in the first race of the season. They shuffled their track positions several times, and all of Alonso's attempts at overtaking failed, as Hamilton also used all of his experience to regain the track position. Alonso cut inside and charged to the apex of the tricky turn 10 and made his final move against Hamilton. Alonso would have been very happy to make such a move against Hamilton after more than a decade. After 40 laps, some issues were noticed in Leclerc's SF23, and he suddenly lost the engine power, opening a question about the reliability of the Ferrari engine again. Leclerc had nothing to do, and he parked his car on the side of the circuit. Then a virtual safety car was deployed, and both Alonso and Russell were called for quick pit stops. However, both had already passed the pit entrance, and they lost the advantage. Thanks to Leclerc's considerate parking, the race resumed quickly, but it was another disappointment for Ferrari as Alonso was approaching towards Sainz at a greater pace. Sainz defended against the two-time world champion very hard, but it was not sufficient to stop Alonso. By lap number 45, Aston Martin was crawling all over the rear of Sainz's SF23, but exiting at turn number 11, Alonso completed his overtake against the Ferrari driver. For the next 10 laps, Red Bull were clearly leading the pack at the front, and they were never at a touchable distance for Alonso. Alonso finished the race as third, securing a podium in his debut race for Aston Martin. It was a 1-2 finish for Red Bull, and the reigning world champions started the season in a winning style. Even though everyone talked about Alonso, Gasly also performed very well in his debut race with Alpine. He started the race in P20 and finally crossed the line at P9 after battling hard in the midfield. However, it was a totally disappointing race weekend for both Ferrari and Mercedes, as they were aiming to give a tighter battle at the top than that. Bahrain GP ended clearly showing the dominancy of Red Bull again, and that they will have to face an unexpected rival this year. Both Mercedes and Ferrari will need considerable improvements before the next race in order to remain in the championship battle. What do you think about the next race? Can Aston Martin challenge the top 3 consistently at the top? Come on, share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel to get more exciting Formula 1 news. See you in the next video, guys. Goodbye.